Hey. So it is now, I don't know, mid-April, late April. It's like a week left until May. I have not been doing any updates on the Yarden. I have meant to. They are lost in my phone. I've been doing lots of work and lots of updating to the Yarden over the last couple of months. I have recorded several videos that I just got busy with life and never finished editing. And so I keep saying every day, like, okay, I'm gonna go finish those videos. And I have not. I don't know if I'm even gonna be able to get them all finished. So what I've decided to do is just go ahead and make this video to give the April Spring 22 Yarden Tour. And then if I have time to go back and finish those edits, then I'll just post late videos of the planting. Planted basically everything I'm going to plant. Here in Central Texas, Hill Country Zone 8B, where I live, it is, well, spring is sprung. So it is spring and the weather has actually been really nice this week. We finally got some rain. We are kind of heading towards drought status. We had a really low rainfall for winter, and then we got into spring, and then it was also low. And so now, like, we live by the lake, and we have boat ramps that are closed, and summer hasn't even hit, so that's a bummer. But it's a nice cloudy day. It'd be a great time to come do the Yarden Tour. So yeah, let's head outside and take a look at the garden.
Okay, so as far as the actual garden goes on that side, we still have, you can see the green sticking up. That is all garlic that I planted in October and it overwintered. The next two beds to the right of that are onions that I had to start this spring. I should be pulling up onions right now because I planted them in October, early November, but my chickens got out and ate them all. So I had to replant them. And then in this first one at the very front, I have cow peas. And so that's what I have over there. This year in my pots, now I live on a full acre and not quite half of it is fenced. So it looks like it's fenced back here, and that's just mainly because of our neighbors. But the whole front section is not fenced. We started it, we haven't got it done yet. So that's the reason why we have this our backyard we call the Yarden, because it is the little backyard behind the house, but it is what I have turned into a complete garden. And so when you come out my back door, it's all Yarden. But that's why we have this little area still fenced off, is because we haven't been able to finish the big fence done. We're gonna take down this dividing fence and probably expand the Yarden out a little bit. Section, this is a lemon tree, and then all well, this is my kids' fairy garden, and they have little flowers they planted. These are my sweet potatoes that I have started. I'm waiting for them to sprout a bunch of slips, and then I'm gonna plant those in the teepee. And then this whole section along the fence are different berries. This is the blackberries I planted last summer, and they have exploded. So I went back this spring and I got several pots more of different varieties of thornless blackberries, because this one has thorns and it is awful in the summertime. Okay, this is the expanded Yarden that we built last year. I have new wood chips that I need to bring out just to kind of make it fluffy and new again. See, in this first bed, we're gonna make it an herb garden, and my dog came and dug all in it. As you can see the big hole in the middle, and he dug half of them up. So I'm kind of late on starting some, so I think I'm just gonna go to the local nursery and get a bunch of different herbs and just fill this bed up while I still have time. On this side, I let my girls make their own flowers, and I wish I could tell you what kinds they were, but I let them buy like 8 different packets, and they planted them everywhere in this bed as well as all over the rest of the garden. And I don't even know. I know that there were different peonies, marigolds, and sunflowers for sure. Outside of that, I can't remember. This bed right now is all of our greens. So I have some late broccoli. I don't know if they're gonna have time to make before it gets too hot. And then I have different kales, which the worms are attacking. Plus it's getting too hot, so I'm afraid they're gonna bolt if they haven't turned bitter already. And then back here I have different lettuces. I have romaines and butter crunch and they're doing great. I actually just sowed some more in succession. So basically, succession planting just means that you, instead of planting your things all at once so that you get a harvest all at once, you plant a few at a time. And then that way you harvest some and you have others growing behind it. So instead of having a whole ton of lettuce all at once, because there's no way to store lettuce, after a while it will go bad. You can't can it, you don't want to freeze it. So for lettuce, for example, or carrots, or really, gosh, even most things, you want to plant like a third, wait a couple weeks, plant a third, wait a couple weeks, plant a third, and that way you have a good residual amount constantly coming in, so you're not bombarded. Just a side note, for this next year, I've decided I want to try to succession plant peppers and tomatoes. Now, it's going to be kind of tricky because, especially in my zone, it's a really sweet spot. I know that our last frost date is early compared to a lot of people in a lot of other zones, because we get to start planting very soon, and they're, in May still waiting. But for us, it's a kind of a delicate battle, because while we can plant, it also gets really hot really fast. So you have to get plants in the ground as soon as you can work the soil so they could get mature and grow. But also, if you're late, they're just going to burn up with the sun, or they're going to grow, but they're not going to bear fruit. Like once the tomatoes or peppers get too hot, you can keep the plants alive, but mine usually stop producing. I start all my peppers and tomatoes indoors in early January. I bring them out sometime in early March, it just depends. But what I'd like to do is succession plant them inside. So start, like I just said, a third in 3 different time increments separated by 2 weeks. And that way I will plant them 2 weeks, I'll plant a set, 2 weeks, plant a set, 2 weeks, plant the next set. And that way I'm not getting bombarded with tomatoes and peppers all at once next year. But we'll see. That's just what I figured out. I haven't actually put it into play yet. Okay, so then in these next beds, this one is exploding, but it also has a ton of grass seed, which is awful. So I need to pull up all that grass. But I have cucumbers on both sides of the trellis, and in the next 2 months, this whole trellis will be covered in greenery. I have on both sides of the trellis is cucumbers. Next to that, on both sides, I also planted green beans, and I'm succession planting more green beans. The same thing with succession planting everything else. The green beans is the same. My family loves them. We go through a lot of them. I want to can and freeze them. So my plan is to plant several spots, and then I will have lots all summer long. I have different kinds of squashes. These have really taken off since it rained. Do this zucchini, I think we got it last night. There's like 7 different zucchinis growing on it, and the leaves have just exploded. It's so funny because there's like 3 plants and it's already taken up half the bed. So what I need to come out here and do, that I do every year, is I kind of strategically like help guide it outside the bed, so it's not just taking over and drowning out other plants, it's kind of spilling over. So something new that I decided to do this year was do potatoes in grow sacks. Next year I want to actually I'm probably going to triple this, because the smaller ones I wasn't able to fit as much, but in the bigger one I was able to fit like 6 different seed potatoes. I planted potatoes in a regular raised bed the last few years, and they're so fun. I know, it's flowering.
Isn't it beautiful?
It is beautiful. But what we found was difficult in the raised bed is you were digging, and it was hard to get to the potato, or we found we were damaging the potatoes as we were getting them out. And then I had some sprout, so obviously we didn't get them all, we left some behind. So with the grow bag, we put great soil and compost, really nutrient dense, because potatoes are heavy feeders. After these are ready to harvest, what we'll do is we'll just dump them into whatever spot we have available in one of these beds. We'll dump them all out, so none of the soil will go to waste. We'll be able to find and harvest all the potatoes easily, and it opens up more spots in the beds, because the thing about the potatoes, like with the onions and the garlic, is they really do take a while. So my plan is to get probably 10 bags total, and I'll just line an area in potato bags, and then I'll have more space to grow in my beds. Now behind the potatoes I have, oh gosh, what was this, 5 or 6 rows of carrots that we planted like in January, I want to say, and they never germinated. Then when it warmed up, they all took off, and it's a little late for carrots for our zone, but like with most things with gardening, it's all an experiment anyways, so we're just gonna let them go and kind of see what happens, and hopefully we'll, at least if nothing else, we'll get small baby carrots before it gets really hot. And then, oh, these are definitely some sunflowers that the girls planted. And then those back there are rows of okra. So the idea is we'll get really tall okra that will kind of block the fence. Moving to this side of the trellis. So we have the cucumbers, which I need to kind of tie a string to train to grow this way, because it looks like they're growing into the green beans. I have green beans, and then this is where I put the rest of the squash. There's different kinds of zucchini squash, and then I also have kinds of yellow squash
Mom, that's
that
been
are
gone
growing.
forever.
That is Mexican oregano. I need to dig it out and transplant it into the herbs. Now these 3 trash cans are something we just pulled out the last few days because it rained, and I wanted to collect as much rainwater as I could, so I just threw some trash cans out, and we actually got a lot. After seeing how easy it was and how much rain we got from just an hour of a quick rain shower, building a rainwater collection system is really high on the list for me later this spring, before we really hit hard into canning, because I'll be busy canning, but I really want to do a rainwater collection. Okay, I planted something here. See those? No idea what they are. Totally forgot. So I think it's some kind of beans. Obviously there was a low germination rate, which is fine because I'm going to do a whole nother set of green beans over here anyways. But I really wish I remember what it was. I did plant some beans because this old bed of my daughter's, it's a metal, it's an old metal bed frame. The middle part where the bed goes on broke. I didn't know what we were going to do with this, and a friend suggested I put it in the garden to use as a trellis, and it is so pretty, and it's a great idea. But down below we have beans that I planted to go up the trellis, but unfortunately I have all of these are sweet potatoes, but they're volunteers. I didn't plant these, so obviously I didn't get all the sweet potatoes dug up last year, because now I have a ton just popping up. That's another sunflower. But these are all some garlic. These are actually elephant garlic that I got from the grocery store. So this is my experimental bed. And I planted them all back in November, December, and they look like they are ready to be pulled up. They're dying back. This one looks really big. And I have a garlic scape. I don't think I've ever had garlic with a garlic scape. Okay, I'm totally curious because it's starting, let's see, that's too low. The garlic is starting to die back, so I'm super curious if it's ready. So let's just see.
Sorry, Mom.
Well, okay.
That looks big.
It smells like garlic. Don't pull any more up, don't pull it. So it looks big, but this is what I was afraid of. So they're not quite ready. You can see right here, it's starting to form into separate bulbs, but right now it's not. It's kind of more just like one big bulb. So I'm gonna leave this out to kind of dry for a couple of days. I'm still gonna use it, but these guys definitely need a little bit more time to so stratification can take place, and then the individual heads will form and be big and ready to harvest. This is the section. Okay, so I took a picture of this exact same spot. Oh, a hummingbird. Sorry, I'm like squirrel. In this spot last year. This is part of our tomatoes, and last year they were all the way up here. They got to be 7 feet tall. It was the best tomato year I've ever had. So this year I grew even more. I think I kind of lost track. I think pretty sure we planted 29 plants, and
7 varieties. I totally forgot. I know that we have Abe Lincoln, Kellogg Breakfast, Mortgage Lifters, Paul Newman, Pink German. There's a cherry variety, Amish Paste. I'll write them below because I really did kind of forget. But I did put them together. I put like ones together. Last year they all got mixed up and it was just different ones everywhere. So I grouped them all by the variety. So this is, let's see, like I said, I started them indoors in early January inside. I started hardening them off early May, and then I planted them in late May. I think it was like the second week. I think it was the second week of March, and they are looking really great. They're starting to grow up. My trellis, this is just like a hog wire fencing. The other one is a lot the other one's a lot better. This is actually cattle panel and it holds a lot more weight. This one started bending and falling last year, so we added a 2x4 to the top this year. They're all mostly standing up, but this one that's producing tomatoes already is starting to kind of grow on the ground, so I need to start taping these up really well. They look really healthy. So same over here. This one, it's the first time I've grown tomatoes on this back side, which I hope it does well because the tomatoes on this side, I think they're gonna get enough sunlight. They'll be fine. But we did this for 2 reasons. One is this section gets a lot of afternoon sun because there's no tree to really shade it. It's back here with our chickens, and so what we wanted to do is create a garden wall, so it'll kind of bing each other. The tomatoes love lots of sun, but at the same time they'll grow big, they'll fill this up, they'll cover our chickens, and that way our chickens won't get super hot in the summer heat because it can be brutal. Now granted, they don't usually stay in the coop all day. We let them out to run around, and they have this whole back area to run around in during the day. They only get locked up at night, but still this will really help with shading them out and keeping them cool all summer. The bed in between the 2 tomato beds is all peppers, and last year I had total trouble in the fact that my toddler pulled out all of the tomato labels, and that's why I didn't know what tomato was what. And for the most part, tomatoes and peppers, when they are plants, you really can't tell what is what. I don't know them good enough to know what was what, so it was kind of like a big surprise when it started growing. So this year I know what all the tomatoes are because they're actually marked. But I did the same thing with peppers. 16 pepper plants. They're all different kinds. When they come in, they're just gonna be like a surprise. What I have been doing differently this year is a neighbor down the street gave us her rabbits that she was no longer able to take care of. So I've been saving, if you can see, I have been saving and adding their poop to the beds, and I think it's really helping. Everything is growing really well. I haven't been fertilizing, and everything is green and beautiful. There's a lot of leaves that are touching the ground, so I am going to come in here and trim up the bottom of these tomato plants as I tie them up to the trellis. The last area is the teepee, and I decided this year we planted beans around the bottom of the sticks, and these are all climbing varieties, so they will climb up and take over the teepee. Around that, the girls planted some different flowers, and then here in about 3 weeks, maybe less, around the outside of the bags, I'm gonna put my sweet potato slips. So the theory in that is, what I'm thinking is, so the beans will be growing up on the trellis and it'll make this beautiful canopy around the teepee limbs. Then we'll have flowers that will be bringing in bees and beneficial bugs. But then, because these are grow bags, I'm gonna plant the sweet potato slips around the bag. That will allow them to kind of spill out and grow around the teepee, kind of like with the squash. And then when it's all ready to harvest, the beans should be spent
It'll be a perfect time to get rid of all of it. So we will do the same thing with the sweet potatoes, and we will just take the entire bag and be dumping it into the raised beds. So we'll be saving the soil, making sure we get all the potatoes, and really utilizing all the space. This year I didn't plan accordingly because I thought I was gonna have full beds, and I'm noticing that I still have a lot of empty spots. I'm gonna plant like marigolds along this area to help with the tomatoes and the peppers, but I also need to plant different cantaloupes and watermelons and some more beans because we really like and use a lot of beans. This is what the garden looks like so far, and in literally 1 more month this entire area is just going to be green. It's going to be full and lush, and it's going to be a Yarden food jungle.